Hello. A lot of sunlight in my face this morning, folks. Have you seen that? So it's quite a low sun. It hasn't been up for very long, you see, but it's very beautiful. It's very, very beautiful indeed. But I've got to hold a camera like this so it illuminates my face in a very nice way. I'm sure you'll all agree. Folks, I just want to let you know, I've dried off a bit now, so I have. I'll just lean against this wee post here. I've dried off a bit now, but earlier this morning I took a wee swim out. That's right, I took a wee swim out to see how Richard was getting on. Now Richard, the terrifying creature from the deep. So I rocked up to his wet house out there, and I answered the door, and he was very pleased to see me, as he always is. He said, "Mr. Stephen, what an honour and a privilege. You've come to see me again in my wet house. What can I do you for?" I said, "Well, Richard, I've come to check in on you and to see how you're doing with your job at the underwater cinema." I said, "Well, that's very nice of you. Nice that you're thinking of me. Come in and I'll tell you all about it." So that's what I did, folks. I went out into his house and he told me all about it. So he said, first of all, I had to have the interview, and I was very relieved when I got to the interview, because I was worried. I was concerned that there would be one of those big interview panels with lots of creatures and things like that interviewing me, but it wasn't. It was just the manager of the underwater cinema, a manager by the name of Mr. Montgomery, who is a basking shark. But he's a very nice basking shark. However, I think he was somewhat nervous because he had to meet such a terrifying creature as myself. Yes, he had a few drinks in him. He was just a wee bit lively. He was in no way blittered. He was fine. He was compos mentis. I think it was just to steady his nerves a wee bit, which is understandable considering how utterly terrifying I am. So he says, Richard, what are we going to do with you? What are we going to do with such a terrifying sea creature from the deep? We were thinking about putting you front of house on the ticket desk there, but there is a fella, I say a fella, he's a sea creature doing that job there. Creature by the name of Damien. Now Damien's been doing the job for a couple of years now. He's quite good at it and he enjoys it. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep him there. We're going to try you out anyway on the refreshments booth. So you'll be dealing with the popcorn, the soggy, salty popcorn that we have down here, and also a few of the fizzy drinks that we have too. How does that sound to you? So Richard said that sounds great. He was willing to give it a go. But then Mr. Montgomery said, we're going to have to get you a wee uniform to wear. And you need to do something about your hair, because it's a wee bit long and scraggly looking, so it is. To which our friend Richard said, "I'm not cutting my hair. What I will do for you is I'll tie it up, I'll tidy it up a wee bit for you, and I'm going to put it in a wee creature bun out the back of my big scary head. How does that sound?" So Mr. Montgomery said, that'll do rightly. Thanks for the compromise. So he did his trial shift, folks. Did a trial shift, and it was quite a busy night at the underwater cinema, so it was. He was serving the people quite well, and then what happened was there was a bit of a rush, and lots of customers were queuing up, and Richard, despite being a very terrifying, proud, majestic sea creature that he is, he got himself in a wee bit of a flap. Couldn't serve the customers fast enough, so what he did is he pulled something quite brilliant out of the bag, as they say. Now Richard has many tendrils, quite terrifying tendrils, but they can be quite useful tendrils as well. And what he did was he made use of all of these tendrils to scoop out the soggy popcorn and pour the fizzy drinks. But all he had to do was remember, if he could remember about 10 orders, then all the tendrils would do the rest of the work, and he would then therefore serve the customers much faster than he had been doing. But he said, here's the thing that's hard to remember about this place and serving popcorn to marine life. He said, up there on dry land, where you have your cinemas, Mr. Stephen, it's a different matter altogether. You've only got 3 to 4 different popcorn sizes, whereas we've got about 100 different popcorn sizes. And I said, why is that, Richard? He said, I'll tell you why it is, Mr. Stephen. It's because look at all the different sized customers we get here. We get everything from the wee shrimp all the way up to the big whales, and they all like to come in to watch the films, so they do. So you'll find that like the smallest size portion we do is obviously just one wee bit of popcorn there. And a wee bit of popcorn will quite safely feed a family of shrimp. They'll quite happily munch away on that all the way through the 90 minutes of your average thriller. Whereas a big whale, for example, the big whales, they're greedy big boys. They'll need a big bucket of the stuff. They go large on that, and a really quite large fizzy drink as well, because they do like their fizzy drinks, as you know, the whales. So he said, once you get all that in your head, it's actually quite easy. The rest of the job is quite straightforward. I said, that's very interesting, Richard. Thank you for the insight into the refreshments booth at the Underwater Cinema. I'm just going to start taking a wee dander here, folks. As he was doing his trial shift, he said that Mr. Montgomery, the Baskin Shark manager of the cinema, was keeping his beady Baskin Shark eyes on him. And afterwards he told Richard how incredibly impressed he was at his resourcefulness at pulling out his mighty tendrils to serve all the customers very, very fast. Now, he then said to Richard, you're coming back, we're going to get you working properly. Your trial shift went very, very well. So Richard was very chuffed indeed. But folks, Richard doesn't want to be shoveling popcorn in the Underwater Cinema for the rest of his days. He has lofty ambitions about working down there. And he's got a few ideas, you see, a few ideas. One of them is that he wants to produce a pamphlet, a laminated pamphlet, obviously, that explains the entire plot of the film to all the customers that come to the Underwater Cinema. And why this is, folks, as I have explained to you before, but in case you weren't listening, I'll explain it to you again. You see, all the sea creatures and the fish and the other marine life down there, all the customers, they only understand the wet scenes in the films that they show. And by wet scenes, I mean the scenes that happen under the water in the sea, because they can relate to that. You see, that's their wee world. But they don't understand anything about what goes on above the water, what we call the dry scenes. Well, that's certainly what Richard referred to them to, anyway, the dry scenes. He said if they could understand all the film, you see, they would get so much more out of it, Mr. Stephen. And I would like to produce this pamphlet, but in order for me to produce this pamphlet effectively, I would need to understand those scenes, those dry scenes. But I don't understand them. Can you help me and explain to me what the plots are, and then I can work that all into the wee pamphlet that I do? As I said, Richard, that's an honour. I'd love to help you out. Just say when. Well, I'll say when right now, because there's one film I can't wait to know the plot about, and that's Jaws, because I've seen Jaws 4 or 5 times now down here. The one with a big shark in it. They say the shark is meant to look terrifying, but he's nowhere near as terrifying as I am. And I said, well, that's very true, Richard, but I'll explain Jaws to you. And I did, folks. I explained the plot of the film Jaws to Richard, and you could see his face changing as I explained the plot. And he said, Mr. Stephen, Mr. Stephen, Mr. Stephen, I thought it looked like a good film, but I didn't think it was anywhere near as good as that. What you've just explained to me there is quite wonderful. I particularly love the character of the policeman, the police chief, Martin. It's brilliant the way he has a terrible fear of the sea, of the water, yet he has to go out into the depths of the water to find and slay the shark. I also really cared for the interplay and chemistry between Quint the fisherman and Hooper the bespectacled marine biologist. He said some great scenes, and it's the scene where they're all getting drunk under the boat, in the boat. I said that's just brilliant. He said that's my favourite scene too, Richard. I thought you would approve of that. So there you go, folks. So we're going to roll this out. Richard's going to take the suggestion, take the idea to Mr. Montgomery, just run it past him, see what he thinks of it. But he's very optimistic that he will give him the green light to go ahead with the pamphlet system at the underwater cinema. And that's right, Mr. Stephen, will type up the plot for Richard, but he can take all the credit because I think he deserves a wee break after all the hard times he's been through recently. So folks, I'll report back to you, as I always do, in due course to see how that's all going. I need to go now because I've got a few things I need to do. You see along here some of the water levels aren't where I'd like them to be this morning, so there might be something amiss. So I need to go and make a few notes and just have a walk up and down the beach, just to check up on those things. And if there's anything seriously amiss, I'll make sure to do a wee report for you on that too, sure. But it's been lovely talking to you today. You take care of yourselves, and I'll check in with you soon, sure.